Welcome back guys, and in the last video we looked at the two selection tools, the direct selection tool and just the selection tool. And obviously now if you've looked at both of those and you've had a little bit of a play around with them, you're now going to want to start looking at how we create some beautiful design work, some magic within Illustrator. So the next tool I'm going to show you is again one of those tools that you are going to use again and again and again and again and again for everything that you do, and that tool is going to be this one over here, and this is the shape tool. So technically this one is known as the rectangle tool. Again, shortcut there is M, and if you click and hold on that, you'll see it brings up a flyout menu that gives you some additional selections. So you have the rectangle tool, which is something that you're going to use continually. Then you have a rounded rectangle tool. This is one of those that some people might use it, some people don't. I personally don't use it that often because there's a workaround that the rectangle tool gives you, and I'll show you that one when we do it. You then have the ellipse tool, and notice the ellipse tool has a shortcut all of its own. So it's clear that the ellipse tool is something that you're going to use quite regularly. We then have the polygon tool, and that's very useful for when you want to create those kind of shapes which are hexagons, octagons, those sorts of things. It saves you a lot of time, a lot of effort. Your workflow becomes much quicker. A star tool, fairly obvious, but again you can change a lot of the settings within that. You can have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, a million point stars if you really wanted to go down that route. And then you've got a flare tool. So we'll run through each one of those and you can see exactly how they work and just how Illustrator handles all of these things. So let's start with the rectangle tool. So the rectangle tool is exactly what it sounds. You click onto your rectangle tool, your shape tool, come over onto your artboard, click and hold and drag. Simple as that. Easy, nothing to it. Now the colour is dictated down here by this little box. We'll come on to that later on, but for those of you thinking, well, how did he colour that? Just down here in this little box, give that little double click, you get a colour dialog box pop up and you can pick a colour. Simple as. So this is our rectangle tool, and that works very nicely. We then have our rounded rectangle tool. It's all pretty self-explanatory really. Ellipse. Voila. Polygon. There you go. Star. Little star in there. And finally a flare tool. Now I'm going to do the flare tool over here because I want you to be able to see how it actually comes out. If I were to do that over white, it looks a bit dodgy. So you do want to do that over an image or a colour or something along those lines, and those are all the tools available to you. So let's just go back a little bit and look at our rectangle tool. Now this is pretty much similar for all of the tools that you'll possibly want to use. So I clicked, held and dragged. This gives me a rectangle. But what if I want a square? Well, that's easy. If you press and hold the shift button on your keyboard and then click and drag, you will get a square. And I know that's a square because up here in my width and height tool you can see identical measurements, so I now know that's a square. But what if I want a square on the canvas that is exactly the size I choose? Well, that's pretty easy. Rather than clicking and dragging, I just click and we get this fantastic little pop-up come up. I say it's fantastic, well it is, because it allows you to specify that, for example, I want a rectangle that is 90mm by 90mm. Now the measurements within that box are going to be dictated when you set up your project. Now if you're doing this along and you find that that's actually saying inches where you set your canvas up in inches, don't worry about it, it's going to make no difference. Things will just be a little bit bigger, make the measurements relevant to the size you're working in. If it's in pixels, it's because you started in pixels. Don't worry about that at the moment. We'll go through how to set a document up and all of that later on. At the moment we're just exploring all the tools. So here we have a rectangle of 90mm by 90mm. We OK that, and voila, we have a rectangle in those measurements. It's all very, very self-explanatory, very easy to get on with. Now, it works the same with the ellipse tool. We have the ellipse dialog box. Again, if we put in 100mm by 100mm and OK that, we get a perfectly round circle. You can have long ellipses, you can have tall ellipses. It's very, very easy to get to grips with. Now that click function comes into its own with the polygon tool and the star tool. So when I use the polygon tool, it produced this. Now, if I click the shift button now, essentially the shape is always going to be the same because it's constrained by its angles. But by clicking the shift button, it aligns it. If I take my finger off the shift button, you can see how it just goes all quirly and whirly and roundy. So if you want to make sure that the bottom is going to be absolutely level, click and hold on the shift, and that will give you the option to create a nice straight polygon. Now that one has 1, 2, 3, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sides, which I think is a hexagon. Don't quote me on that one, I'll go and check, and if it's wrong I'll put it in the comments. But let's say I wanted a pentagon, so a 5. Well, I'm going to have to faff around with that quite a lot. Well, actually, you're not. Just click. I want a 5-sided polygon, and I want it to have a radius of 50mm. Voila, I've got a 5-sided. If I want an 8-sided, there's 8. If I wanted a 35-sided, there we go. Now that does have sides, and if I just zoom in, you'll see all the points are connected like that. Okay, so that will allow you to create those sizes of shapes that you want, regardless of the number of sides you need. And again, if we look at our star tool, which will come up here, once again I've just clicked. You've got a radius, you've got a radius too. You've got an outer radius and then a radius and a number of points. So if we just keep that at 64, we keep that one at 32, and we say we want 8 points. There we go, we've got a lovely one. But let's go extreme. Let's say this goes to 100, and this goes to 10, and this goes to 4. You can see how by changing those variables you can change what sort of shapes you make. And basically anything that you do within Illustrator is going to use either one of those shapes for ease, or you're going to use pen tools, and we'll come on to those in a little bit. But fundamentally that's the way you use the shape tool in order to create shapes. So go and have a play, go and have a look at them, enjoy them, see how it works. Thanks for joining me today. In the meantime, click that subscribe button and keep up to date with all of my videos, and join me again for the next part in the Illustrator 101 tutorial series. Thanks guys.